This episode is a little bit different. Normally, when we interview people, we ask them the same sort of questions: where they're from, what school they went to, and what their job is. But in this episode, we jump straight into the questions about their professional service. We interview Mr. Mike Scott, who is the current Director of Veteran Services for Surry County, North Carolina. He is also a 20-year Navy vet who served on submarines. He was a recruiter, and he was a career counselor for the Navy. This is a great episode, and I recommend it to everyone. I learned a lot, and Luke learned a lot. And if you're of any interest in the military, the Navy, veteran services, or you just want to hear an interesting story and a great conversation, this is the episode for you. In the first part of the episode, we're talking about the services that he and his office provide, and then later on, we talk about his time in the Navy, his time as a recruiter, his 1-year stint in the reserves, and a little bit about the nuclear program in the Navy, which is something that I'm really interested in. Once again, this is a great episode. I encourage everyone to listen to it in full. Thanks.
Do you guys know what the USO is?
I do not.
Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
So the USO was actually started in World War II because of World War II. So you had, it was a whole different time back then. The world was totally different. No social media. Nothing. So everybody got called to war. You had people, families, and farmers, and everybody that was of age, went to war, and so you'll see in the video there's the history of it, but the USO is a place, like right now there's USOs all over the country, like in airports and things like that, and it's places for military that are like traveling, or they're going from duty station to duty station, or they're deploying to war, and it's a place they can go in and socialize, kind of their own little place, where there's food and drinks and that kind of thing. There's internet access, and but back in the day, they would have people that would like entertain the troops, and so that's how it came about. But I've got a video you guys would probably be interested in, and I could email it to you, or whatever, but it talks about the USO, but it also talks about with World War II veterans, and we're going to see it now with Korean War veterans and some Vietnam era veterans, but starting to have Alzheimer's, dementia, things like that, starting to come about. And so, a lot of that short-term memory and things like that are gone, but most of them can always recall their time in service and the things that happened. And so, like this video, you'll see that they use it sometimes to get the veterans, to like remember, like come alive again. So it's pretty cool. It's a little historical tidbit. I think you'll enjoy. Kind of doing what you're doing. So
I didn't realize that existed.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's just I ran across it. When when I first started here, and I've always used it. For my older veterans like that, especially the World War II veterans, like you say, there's not many left. So
because they do tours, especially in war zones, don't they?
The USO, they did. Bob Hope and a lot of the comedians from back in the day. Well, even now, you see different performers, different artists will go over and play for the troops and stuff like that. And that's how it came about, was the USO. They would go over, and it was a time for the soldiers where they didn't have to worry about war, for a couple hours, they could have a good time and enjoy themselves,
I didn't realize
And so that was what the USO did. And so, so like here, for example, everything here is Mayberry, so, one of the characters on Mayberry, that's what she did. She toured with the USO, and she went overseas and, performed for the troops and stuff like that. Matter of fact, she just passed away within the past year, but her USO uniform and stuff is over at the museum there at the Andy Griffith Playhouse.
Wow,
So that may be something for you to go in and see her stuff. Like her USO uniform and stuff's in there. So it's pretty cool.
Luke and I went to a court session. We live in Carroll County.
So
we went to the Carroll County Courthouse to sit in our court session, and one of the officers in there was talking about how he had served in Afghanistan, and some artist, I don't remember who it was, had went and just had a performance. Just
Was it
for
Metallica that went over there one time?
A lot of people did, man. I mean, there's a ton of people that go. And there's a lot of people that go, and it's just not, it's not publicized.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's pretty routine, you know, that they've always done that. course, we're not really active anymore right now, but when things were heightened, you saw, a lot of people would go, and then a lot of artists would go, and then just they wanted to surprise everybody. They didn't want it to be a big public, thing, and they would just show up. Like one year, everybody leading up to the day, everybody was, talking about the president, which was Trump at the time, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. Of course, he was a target the whole time he was in office, but he showed up Christmas morning, and he was feeding the troops. He did it like Thanksgiving one year,
like
feeding
Bush,
the
I remember
troops.
him, and like Thanksgiving.
A lot
dinner.
of presidents would go do that kind of stuff, but they just kind of show up, like I know that time with Trump, he showed up just, it was a surprise, out of the blue, and so a lot of artists do the same thing. They just show up, and it's not a publicly announced thing. They're not trying to make a big deal out of it. They're trying to keep it more for the troops, not for themselves. They're not trying to get the notoriety, with the public and stuff. So it's always been a pretty cool deal. I think a little bit of a badge of honor for, the celebrities and stuff that would go over and do that. Kind of supporting their country in a way. So
it looks great.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it really is.
But yeah, we were looking for World War II veterans, but they're hard to find.
Yeah.
There's not many left.
I don't think there's any left in Carroll County.
Yeah.
And we've been trying to talk to one, I think, down in
Patrick
County.
Yeah.
But
he's not totally. He's
Right.
still on the fence about speaking about it. And,
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
and even if they do want to speak, sometimes they're so old it's hard to get them
Yeah.
to come out. So
Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah.
Something you may want to try though is maybe if say a local veteran or a local somebody like in the American Legion or something like that. So you guys are in Carroll County.
We have VFW.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe somebody from the VFW can help you make that connection. Sometimes those veterans will open up more, and I'm nothing against you guys, but another veteran,
Yeah.
they're more apt to open up and be a little more comfortable with, what you guys doing is freaking great and it's awesome. But, somebody from his era, they don't know what a podcast is.
Yeah.
They don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it might be a little foreign to them, and that generation, if they're not comfortable with it, they're not going to have anything to do with it. So that could be a good end for you.
Yeah.
Maybe reaching out to somebody, one of those organizations or something that can help you,
Yeah.
make that connection. So,
Do you know if there are any remaining in Surry County? Surry's a lot bigger than Carroll is.
yeah,
so.
it is. It's a lot bigger. There's probably some that I'm not aware of.
Yeah.
But when you look back and think about how many of those men served, you realize how many are gone now.
Yeah.
Especially in the past few years too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with COVID.
Yeah. For me, they've always called that the greatest generation. And it really was, in hindsight, the way things are now, it was a whole different time. Back then, honor was a big thing, and, it was an honor to serve your country, and throughout everything, the media, everybody, it was like, oh my God, that's, it was just, that's how it was. Nowadays it's totally different. You got people that are anti everything these days, just to, have a voice. And, it really kind of saturates, what it is, the pride and just, being an American and, serving your country. It's kind of like Vietnam. Vietnam was, historically at the time, it was a very politicized war because it was kind of the hippie movement. And that's really where things started as far as, I wouldn't say social media, but that's where people started having a voice and protesting and things like that, because they felt like we shouldn't have been there, that it was a political war and that kind of thing. But essentially what was happening is communism was trying to grow.
Containment is what they call it, right? Yeah.
At the end of the day, right now, looking back at it, we stopped the spread of communism, and communism was, it's not as bad of a word today as it used to be, because there was been the threat for years, going back to the 50s about communism, through the Cuban Missile Crisis and everything. But because Russia was big, Cuba's a communist country, China, and then of course Vietnam, Korea, they was trying to make, Korea, so we had the Korean War, again, try to help stop the spread of communism. Vietnam War, same thing, China was supporting, the North Vietnamese, and then here we were supporting South Vietnamese, and so forth. And we lost a lot of life, and again, it was kind of controversial while we were there, but now we look back on it and we stopped the spread of communism, because we don't know where we'd be today if we hadn't. How strong, so now if you have a whole country that's totally communist, now Vietnam becomes a powerful country, possibly nuclear capable, that kind of thing, and then if we had Korea, Russia, China, we might not be as safe today. Who knows where we'd have been over the last 40 years had that not have happened, type of thing.
Even though Vietnam wasn't by itself, wouldn't have been that dangerous probably. You had the Soviets and stuff putting missiles.
Right, when you start adding things on, every little bit, so now another country might think, well, damn, Vietnam, they're communist, and that may spread to, it can spread, and so, so it was very controversial, but. But in that generation, it was just totally different. It was just pride and patriotism. The women, back then, women didn't really work. They were housewives. So, but they went to work in factories and things. Everybody pitched in to support the country. It was just a different time.
Everybody wanted to go too.
You don't see that now.
Because they see some people committed suicide because they couldn't go if they had something wrong with their foot or whatever.
Oh, people were lying about their age. Guys were joining at 15, 14 years old. Stuff like that. So it was just a different time. I don't know. People had different morals and mindsets. And today it's everybody's just all about themselves. There's not a bigger. A bigger picture,
No greater cause.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, my great-grandpa, he was in Italy in the Second World War, and the guy had to be sent home. He got a dishonorable discharge. They said that was the worst thing ever back then.
Oh, yeah.
He said that he probably couldn't get a job
for
the rest of his life.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just different times.
It used to be that way. That was a big thing. Even in the modern military not too long ago, getting a bad discharge was just a horrible thing. Now, nobody cares.
Yeah.
The guys getting out, they don't care. They'll take a bad discharge and get out. It's not a big deal. And because, it was like you said, you won't get a job anywhere, But now, I don't even know that, half these employers even check or care. You know what I mean? It's just different today.
We spoke to an Army recruiter who talked about that, and he said that if employers do background checks, it'll show up, but he says he's had people who've came back to him who've been dishonorably discharged, and they said it didn't really stop them in any way.
Exactly.
It's just kind of crazy how it can change in 70 years from it ruins your life to no one cares.
Exactly. Exactly.
But you deal with veterans personally every day. Can you talk about that a little
Yes. Are we rolling here?
Yeah.
I'm just
yeah.
going, man. I'm sorry.
That's all great,
So what we do is our job here is to take care of all the veterans in Surry County, and make sure that they get any VA benefits that they're legally entitled to. So we represent them just like an attorney would, and to try to get their disabilities. There's a lot more benefits involved, but the gist of it, the majority of what we do is the disability side of the house, and somebody gets out of service, they have any medical conditions, that are still ongoing today that was due to some type of injury or exposure or something in service, that's what we do. So we go through, all the legality of it, gather a lot of medical evidence, to support the claim. So essentially what you have is you have the VA there, and the VA there is to support the veteran, whether it be to provide health care for them, or they provide, certain monetary benefits, which could be like disability, for example. So, so the veteran comes in, and if they've been out, say 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, So they're like, you know what? Now I've got all these back problems, and I was in the Marine Corps, and I was infantry, and abused their body and that kind of thing. Sometimes those medical conditions take time to
Progress.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So what we have to do is we have to prove to the VA though that these medical conditions are more than likely associated with their time in service. And the reason we do have to do that is because one, the VA don't know. They don't know if a guy, he might have abused his body, but there's a lot of people who come out unscathed and they don't have medical conditions because of it. A lot of people do, but so we have to be able to prove to them that this didn't come from a car accident or a random accident, at home or something like that. And so we have to, get with physicians and talk to them about these conditions and make sure that, that this indeed could have came from a trauma or an injury or something that kind of coincides with their story or the events we see in their records, type of thing.
How do you prove that, like, some diseases like cancer come from carcinogens associated with the war? Like, I know with the Persian Gulf, a lot of the oil and burn pits has caused lymphoma.
Right.
Even like 30 years later, it's just appearing now. How do y'all prove like that?
Well, it's a good question. So there's a new law that just was enacted in August of last year. It's called the PACT Act. And really what that is so from these different campaigns, Agent Orange, for example, that's the big one, for the Vietnam vets. And there's other bases around during that time period that had Agent Orange, but so the Agent Orange, for example. So there's the VA constantly has a list of conditions that they, through research, scientific research, and then data accumulated by veterans across the country, for a time period, who have applied for the same medical conditions. The only thing they all have in common is they all deployed basically to the same area, Vietnam or to Iraq, Afghanistan, or the Gulf War, because of all the burn pits over there. And so now everybody has one common denominator, for that age group of veteran, is they were all deployed to the same place. Yeah. So then the second step is like, okay, so let's see if there's anything to that. So they do scientific research, to see could, say in the Agent Orange there was a dioxin in there, so could that dioxin medically contribute to this problem? Okay, so and VA law says if there's a 50% or greater probability, then they give benefit of the doubt to the veteran. Okay. So it doesn't have to be a 100% lock, stock, and barrel that absolutely this dioxin, causes this problem. But if there's a greater than 50% chance that it can cause that problem, then VA awards benefit of the doubt to the veteran in that case. And so part of the answer to your question is they've already did that, and they've already established themselves through the strength in numbers with the amount of veterans with the common conditions, and then the medical research. So they've started this list of conditions that. So with us, what it tells us is we don't have to have the burden of proof if they're diagnosed with one of those conditions that's on that list. Okay. The VA will verify that yes, they were deployed to, Vietnam or Iraq or Afghanistan, and that condition is on that list. They'll automatically give them the disability for it because of that. Okay. Now, for a condition that's not on that list, which we deal with quite often and almost daily, it's the same concept as with a back or a knee or something like that. Okay. So, matter of fact, the reason I say Marine, we just had a guy in here before you guys got here, Marine. He deployed to Iraq in the early 2000s, and he's got bad back, bad knees, all these problems, and so we're doing the same thing. So what we do is like in his case, we're going to get with he's already service connected for his right knee, getting disability for it from the VA, but his left knee bothers him a lot. Okay. His right hip bothers him a lot. So with us, again, I'm not trying to glorify what we do, but we do the exact same thing as, say, a disability attorney. Okay, we represent our veterans in front of the judge just like they do. We just don't make six figures like they do.
So you're advocates for them.
What's that?
So you're advocates for them.
That's exactly. We're an advocate. That's exactly right. So what we'll do in a case like that is we're going to go see an orthopedic surgeon, and we're going to get his left knee looked at, and then we'll get a diagnosed condition there. What's going on with his left knee? So then we'll pose the question to the doctor. Hey, could his left knee be a product of overcompensating through the years because the right knee's been messed up all these years, and so now you're wearing the other knee out because you've changed your gait. And your body, it's a gift from God, and it's perfect, but then you mess something up, the other part of the body is going to overcompensate for that bad part, and that's what happens with your gait, with your orthopedics, basically from the waist down. So that's what's happened with him, So now these other parts of the body start to have problems with. So again, we're going to, reach out to the physicians and have that conversation. And is there an association here? And medically, if it can be, the case can be made, then we're going to gather that data from the doctors, and then we send that off to the VA. We present our case, that way to them, and then they'll go through their process of looking at everything we send in, and is it, in their mind, is it enough, and then, they'll make their decision,
Do you help veterans' families too? Because I know,
Yes.
how does this work? Because, in the media right now, it's pretty prominent. The water at Camp Lejeune. A lot of veterans' families lived on base
Correct.
too, and they drank that water, and then they're getting affected by it.
Correct.
Do they get benefits?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Just like we would do a veteran, we would put in benefits for them, in that regard, with the VA. The VA does recognize those as far as that goes. However, there's also a civil suit, that they're doing, right now. And so most of those families are participating in that civil suit, because it's much more lucrative, for them, which they do deserve it, because it was something that the reason there's a civil suit is because they knew it was happening, and they tried to hide it, for a number of years, until, it finally got out, and, so thus the civil suit, But we've been trying to get, helping the veterans get disability for those, Camp Lejeune, issues for years, even before the list started, because we knew of the contaminated waters and stuff like that.
You mentioned the PAC law going into effect.
The PACT Act.
PACT Act going into effect last August. Was the
Correct.
process different before then?
No, the process was the same. What the PACT Act is just it was basically an update to the existing list of presumed conditions.
Okay. I see.
And they just called it the PACT Act because, the way that we get, like for example, the Agent Orange, they added hypertension to that, which is high blood pressure. Okay. So for years we've had Vietnam veterans with high blood pressure, and so again, it was just over time, it's like all these Vietnam veterans have high blood pressure. Is there a connection? So the VA did their due diligence, and they come to the conclusion, yes, that it could contribute to high blood pressure. So they added it to that list, okay? So they did the same thing. They did a couple conditions for the burn pit exposures for the Gulf War and Iraq veterans. And so what they did is they introduced one law change, and they named it the PACT Act, and the acronym stands for something. They usually associate it with the name of one of the veterans who eventually, probably through an appeal process with the judge, and won one of those cases, for say the hypertension or one of the new conditions for the Iraq veterans. And so they usually name it after one of those veterans, who won that case. And so once you win a case like that, you've kind of broken the barrier, for all the other veterans with the same conditions to start, to win the cases. Exactly. So they just introduced it, and after they, had everything for, both campaigns as far as, Vietnam and then, the Gulf War and stuff. And then so they just introduced it all at one time, and that's what they called it, so, but the reason it's been so big in the media and stuff is because really they did a huge effort, to get the word out this time,
I see. Yeah.
So really what's been happening is the VA has progressively stepped their game up, year after year, to do more and more for the
Outreach,
awareness to be
yeah.
out there for the veterans, to take advantage, of these benefits. Because in the past they've never had much advertisement or outreach,
People didn't know it
type
was
of
an
thing.
option. Yeah.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So I'd say I started here after I retired in 2009. Probably we've seen some in the last 5 years. I would say we've seen some huge strides in law changes and things like that. The VA's become more aggressive, in their campaign to reach out, to veterans and things like that. So that's what the PACT Act is really. That's just where they have made the notification, spread the word. Been working really hard the past year to send letters to veterans and things like that in the media and so forth to try to bring the awareness so people will come to offices like ours and say, hey, tell me about this PACT Act. What do I need to do? That type of thing.
Do you have to be a resident within? So like this is the Surry County Veteran Services. Do you have to be a resident within Surry County to utilize your services?
No.
Okay.
Okay. That's the answer for my office. Okay.
Oh, so it could be different.
So here's how this works. In North Carolina, we have an office in every county.
Okay.
In Virginia, you guys don't.
Yeah, because I didn't think we had one in Carroll.
No. And that's always been a little pet peeve of mine, and we'll get into that. But so essentially for us, my county pays me. They pay my staff. All the support with the software and everything we have to do our job. The county provides that for us to take care of the citizens in our community. So that's the technical answer to your question. Okay. The beauty of our county is I have an awesome county manager and an awesome board of commissioners, and they support my office wholeheartedly. They totally understand that everything we do is for the greater good, and so what we do. You asked a while ago about families and stuff like that. So the technical answer to that Camp Lejeune thing was yes. That we can do claims for the families, just like we can for the veterans. But the long answer to that question is there are benefits for the families aside from the veterans. Okay, so just out of curiosity, either one of your parents veterans by chance? So let's just say they were. Example. Let's just say you dad was a veteran, and he's drawing VA benefits, whatever it may be. So depending on his status as a veteran, you may get health care that the VA pays for, or your mom. So veterans that are 100%, the VA pays for Champ VA Insurance. It's a federal insurance company that covers children and the spouse. So which is fantastic because that's a financial burden your family don't have to have because of the status of your dad or mom or whoever the veteran is. So there's that. There's education opportunities that the VA provides. The state of North Carolina, Virginia does the same thing for dependent children of veterans. There's state scholarships, that they have. I know in North Carolina, our state scholarship pays 100% tuition to any public accredited school in North Carolina, and then if it's a private school, say like a Duke or a Wake Forest or something, they pay so much per semester, towards, your education. So there's a lot of benefits combined with state and VA benefits that do help, with the families as well,
So-
to help with the spouses.
So there's a distinction there. There's VA and then there's state.
That's correct. So there's a state. So like every state has a Virginia Department of Veterans Affairs, a North Carolina, Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. So there's a state entity, with every state. And then with us in North Carolina, and I want to say there's at least 30 some, maybe almost 40 states that have county service officers like us here in North Carolina, where we have an office in every county. So essentially what you have with us is the state, we're a little unique. Our state representatives it's actually a branch of government within North Carolina. A few years ago, they added that as a new branch of government in North Carolina. It's called the North Carolina Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. I don't think Virginia has done that.
Not sure.
But what it did for us is it put us in. Well, now they're part of state legislation, and so now they have more insight and are recognized more now as not just a regular state employee. Now we're actually part of state government.
I see.
As far as that goes.
So you get a voice.
So exactly. So at the state level, for us, they're kind of like our liaison to the VA at a federal level, or they may oversee some of our training and so forth that we have to have. So we have to have so many continuing education hours every year to maintain our accreditations to do this legally. So they do that for us. So to kind of put it in perspective, we're kind of like the VA's infantry.
Okay.
I don't work for the VA, but they train me, and I associate with them continuously because the better I do my job, the easier their job is.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's one of those things.
Yeah.
So we have a really good relationship with the VA. So now in Virginia, what's different for you guys is you just have state representatives. So for example, in the part of the state you live in, you have, if I'm not mistaken, you have one representative in the Wytheville area that covers I don't know exactly how many counties, but it's quite a few counties
We have
for just that one person.
I forget what it's called. It might be like the Armed Services Office.
Well, I think they come to. I know used to. They would go to like Hillsville one day a week, and maybe down to like somewhere Cana, or they would somewhere one day a week. To try to help at least have some representatives in that area. The problem is, when it's very seldom like that and random. I don't care how good of a service officer that person is or how good of an advocate. It's hard to do all those counties by yourself.
Yeah.
So going back to me and my commissioners and my county manager, they've always asked me from the day they hired me, how I felt about that, and I told them, I don't. For us, we're not going to leave anybody out there flapping in the wind. We're going to help anybody that comes to our office, and so they're cool with it. They're okay with us, putting the time in, as long as we don't take away from our own local citizens or veterans, So we have a pretty extensive reputation, in this part of the country, this office, because we take care of so many people. And in Virginia, we well above Wytheville, south. Most of the veterans come to us because you don't have local representatives.
Can veterans of the North Carolina National Guard that have deployed come to you too?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, anybody in North Carolina. I mean, see, we get accredited through the state to represent veterans and on a national level. So when we're on a national level like that, we can do anybody, across borders. So it doesn't matter. So like attorneys, you'll have some attorneys that are licensed to practice law just in North Carolina, and they have to maybe look for a counterpart if it's in Virginia. Then you'll have some that, some states will have that reciprocal, where they recognize it, so that, with us, we're covered all the way around. I had, matter of fact, last month, it was a friend of a friend, my last CO, he was an F-16 pilot, and his call sign was Wacky. His last name was Wackendorfer. And so this dude calls me from Tennessee. He's like, hey, man, Wacky told me to give you a call. I'm a buddy. We flew together back in the day, blah, blah, blah. And he wants some help with his claim, and he lives in Knoxville, Tennessee. So I was like, yeah, man, no problem. So I asked him what he did for a living. He's a federal judge. And I'm like, Your Honor, come on. What do you need me for? He said, well, I don't know the VA system. And so I helped him do his claim, and we just did it remotely, over the phone and stuff, so we help anybody, and I've actually advocated in Virginia, some years back. I went and had a sit down with, a state senator up in Galax about trying to help Virginia get county service officers.
Was it Bill Stanley?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
He was a big guy. Probably been about 10 years ago.
I think Bill's been in office that long. Was it a state senator or a congressman?
Well, I thought he was a state senator.
Okay.
Well, who would some of the congressmen be?
We have Morgan Griffith. He's a U.S. congressman.
I don't know if he's been.
Bill Carrico used to be.
That's him. That's who it was. Yeah, that's who it was. So I went to his office and I brought all the data from my office, the budget, how much money the county contributes to my office, all the line items and everything, to try to advocate for Virginia to adopt this concept, because all these other states are doing it. So essentially, Carroll County would hire 1 or 2 people to have an office there to do what we do. So the advantages to that, the obvious advantage is you can help more veterans. Because the veterans know there's a local, a local advocate, somewhere they can go to ask questions. Because we could sit here for hours and go over different things, but there's just so many minor things that these veterans need to know. There's little things they need to know about their health care benefits and things that they can do, like they can go to local doctors and the VA will pay for it. They don't have to make that hour-and-a-half drive to Salem or wherever they have to drive to. If they have an emergency, over the weekend, have to go to the emergency room, they have to be able to call the VA within 72 hours and make them aware of that emergency, or the VA will not pay for it. Now you've got an elderly, man or woman who, they live on a fixed income as it is, and now they got a $50,000 emergency room bill they can't pay. If they would have known, the VA would have paid for it. Just little things like that, having an advocate available, we can educate these people. So you got all these people, living up there, in these rural counties, like Carroll and all the other ones, and they have no clue. The veterans have no clue. But so the impact that an office like ours has, for example, just here in Surry County, we have about, I want to say it's about 3,400 veterans that are on record in the VA system, whether they're getting disability or in the healthcare system. And we, through our office, we help generate almost $57.5 million that we put in their pockets, tax-free dollars that we put in their pockets. So that came from, there's myself, 2 other service officers here, and then I have an administrative assistant. So that's 3.5 people that generated, that kind of money. So what that does, one, we're helping the veterans. We're making sure they get all the benefits that they deserve, and their families. But 2, at the end of the day, and I think what my county has understood is the more people I can help, the more
spending power in that economy.
Exactly. If I'm putting more money in their pocket, they can buy cars, they can buy houses, they can refinance their homes, all the things that generate the tax revenue for local county government and the local economy. So like for us, if you associate that with all the businesses in my county, we're going to be close to the top of the list. You take any business here in Surry County and say, okay, how much revenue do you generate, that you're putting in the pockets of your employees? Nobody's going to be able to say $57 million, And so, the year before, I think we did like in the low 50s, and then this past year we did 57, but that's just in Surry County. Now we probably did 10 million in Virginia alone, outside of that. But so what I was trying to get, Mr. Carrico to understand, and he was very receptive to it, and he told me he was going to take it to the state. Now where it went from there, I don't know, but so you take a young veteran, and you say, okay, we can pay you $30,000, $35,000 a year to be an advocate right here in Carroll County. That would be a really good job for somebody up there. And you combine that with the benefit package and everything they can offer somebody. It'd be a good job for somebody local living in the area. But now that person's going to be able to generate much more revenue, tax dollars, for the community, it's going to come back. So what little bit the county would pay would be putting out an income and stuff for that person. Exactly.
It'd pay for itself.
Right.
And you deal with a lot of older people. And I kind of wanted to ask you this. How did the COVID crisis affect your job, especially with older veterans getting sick and being in the hospital?
Yeah, but to be honest with you, it didn't affect us a whole lot. You know, we were working remotely quite a bit. So the biggest impact for us is we didn't get that one-on-one interaction when we're like what we're doing here today. You know, whereas most of it was done either through Zoom or just talking on the phone. You know, but probably the biggest impact it had is just things slowed down a lot because the VA slowed down a lot. Again, sickness and people being out and things like that. But we never stopped. It's not like we closed up shop. We worked from home quite a bit, and we were very effective doing that. To be honest with you. So, so really the big thing was just the slowdown, just the same obstacles everybody had. Hospitals were full and all that kind of stuff. But we did have some loss of life. Where there was a lot of contributing factors because a lot of our people. Especially our older veterans, Vietnam era, that kind of thing, there are a lot of cancers and diabetes and those type of things that can have significant impact, on you, and then you get COVID, so it did have some, significance as far as, on the healthcare side of it, but we didn't have as much loss of life as I thought we might. So we persevered pretty good on that front.
Does the VA help with cancer treatments too?
Absolutely.
So what was it like? Because I know during COVID, even if people weren't getting sick and dying from COVID, a lot of cancer treatments got delayed.
Sure. And so something VA had done, some years ago, actually when Kernersville, that's our newest hospital. It's probably about 4 years old, maybe somewhere in that range, but so one thing that we did here in North Carolina, I'm assuming most VAs have done the same thing, is Kernersville partnered with Baptist Hospital.
Okay.
So essentially the reason they did that is really VA has a hard time recruiting doctors, just because private practice pays so much more than what VA can pay. So what they did is they finally got smart. It's like we're having such a hard time, so now they've partnered with local hospitals, like the Durham VA partners with Duke. So we're with Wake, and so what happens is the VA is referring those out to those specialists, through the Wake Forest system or the Duke system, depending on where you live. So we were seeing a lot of private physicians, through that VA was paying. They were subcontracting, these facilities, for a lot of care. So. But they've been doing that, for years, even before the pandemic came through. So it really helped that they already had that established, that system in place.
Yeah, I was wondering if like the VA had its own physicians or how that worked. And
and they do. There's a lot of VA doctors, out there, and like I say, they get paid well, as any doctor would, but not near what you'd be, if they were working at, Duke or Wake or somewhere, or a private practice, So I guess it's really up to the physician, how they want to, anchor their career, so like I've had a couple local physicians, specialists, who have questioned me about, maybe going to the VA and leaving private practice. For various reasons, one thing VA does offer is a retirement program, after so many years and stuff like that. If you're in private practice, you don't have that. If you work for the VA, you don't have to pay the liability insurance, which a lot of physicians have to pay, which is very, very expensive.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, because with the VA, there's no, you don't sue, you don't have malpractice suits. Just like the military. So it's the same concept as far as that goes.
I see.
So there's some interest there with some physicians because of those type of things. It just depends on the circumstance they're in.
It has to be uplifting for those doctors too to be able to help.
It is. Exactly. So, again, it's kind of an individualized, type of thing, but so there's pros and cons, going all the way around.
Does your office also help with like education benefits? Because my boss was a Marine, and he served. He was a Cuba embassy guard, and he was there when it was attacked, actually.
Yeah.
But he just recently went back to school, and he told me he was in contact with the VA office, and I wasn't sure if it would be this.
All universities or community colleges or wherever, they're going to have a VA rep there.
Okay.
And so that's their purpose, is to, so depending on what education benefits they have left, as the veteran, then they would get with that rep at the school, and they can pull them up and see exactly, how much of their GI Bill have they used, what do they have left, that kind of thing. So there's a different variety of GI Bill programs through the years that's been offered, to the military members. So it just depends on, when you served and what program you fell under, and that kind of thing, so that's their wheelhouse, the educational, VA reps like that at the schools take care of that.
I think he was post 9/11 GI Bill.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which was a great program. Now there's a Forever GI Bill program, which, so in the past, the consensus is you've got 10 years when you get out of service to use your GI Bill. After that 10 years, it kind of goes away. Like when I went in, you actually contributed. If you enrolled
that was
in
to
GI
Montgomery,
Bill,
right?
yeah, exactly. So you paid so much every month for the first 2 years, and then after that, when you got out, you could use your GI Bill. But then it was only good for 2 years. If you didn't use it after those 10 years, it went away. So now you wasted your money. Type of thing. So, and then they did the all the different. It's just changed, and it's got better through the years. And I forgot which president it was, but anyway, they started the Forever GI Bill, and I think basically they didn't put an expiration date on it, that type of thing.
Yeah. I was wondering, because I believe my boss has been out for more than 10 years, and I wasn't sure how that works, because I heard that it expired.
Again, depending on, which one he fell under, what was the expiration on it, if there was one, type of thing. And that's where he would get with that VA rep, at wherever he wanted to try to go to school, and even if it's online, they would still have somebody, or, regardless of where you, like, our rep at Surry Community, doesn't matter where you go to school, you can call them and they'll tell you, what you need to know, But, so yeah, it just, depends on the individual and, what program they fell under, so.
And do you see a lot of physical issues with veterans?
Yeah.
How do you help and advocate for veterans with PTSD?
So we basically do it the same way. I mean, the concept's the same, but you handle those. So I guess a good way that we like to kind of explain to people what we do is we fill the shoes of an attorney, we fill the shoes of a social worker, and in some cases counseling. Now. We don't go there with people, and try to be their counselor per se. Yeah. But what we try to do is we try to encourage people, to help themselves and to give them the tools and the resources, to help themselves or to help their families, by helping themselves, type of thing. So, on the healthcare side of it or on that aspect of it, it's really all up to the individual, somebody could do this job and be very robotic about it and just take people as they come in, no more, no less. It's kind of one of those jobs where, if your heart's in it, you're going to go the extra mile and you're going to do everything you can to help that person, provide those resources and things like that. That gentleman that was just in here before you guys came in, he wasn't here for anything VA related. He wanted me to help him fill out his Social Security disability application. So I did. So we do a lot more than just the robotic part, the disability stuff. So we get a lot of training, on how to recognize, the signs and the symptoms and everything. Of course, it helps being a veteran, as well. So we get a lot of training on how to recognize that, and then really you just, I think through, in some cases maybe just instinct, but some cases just experience, combination of those. But, you just try to do your best to be empathetic, sympathetic, and try to relate as much as you can. But, if we let that person know that we're here to help them, we're here to do whatever we can to help them personally, professionally, whatever it may be, and they realize that we're trying to help them. It really, you can just kind of see they just kind of relax and they realize this person cares, and so so in a lot of cases they kind of evolve,
Yeah.
with us during a conversation, and you just see the willingness for acceptance,
Yeah.
So basically we do our best to try to recognize it, and so then just have to put your personal spin on it, on how we want to make their quality of life better.
Mm-hmm.
We want to provide these resources, so they can help themselves, which would better their lives all the way around. But at the same time, we want to get them recognized for it and credibility for it through disability, or whatever it may be, like that. And so a lot of times we see it's kind of a twofold deal. We can get the disability for it, which in their mind a lot of times they finally get that vindication that somebody is recognizing, what they've done, and how they've suffered, up to that point. And so that helps a lot, and then, combined with the resources. That's one good thing with the VA. They have tremendous resources for that kind of stuff. They really do. They're really good at that. They have a good team of, psychiatrists, psychologists, accredited counselors, things like that, and then there's like sub branches of the VA. There's one called the Vet Center.
Okay.
And what the Vet Center is we have different locations around the state with this. These are all veterans. They're all accredited counselors.
Okay.
They're kind of they work for the VA, but they're kind of their own little special subcategory of the VA, if you will. Kind of like the Navy SEALs, for example.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The Navy SEALs kind of live their own life. They have their own community, even though they're Navy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how these people are. So, and they're mobile. They come out. They have like RVs and stuff where they can be remote and get out in the communities. And provide that one-on-one counseling and so forth. So, and they also will help counsel the families.
Okay.
So you got a veteran that's suffering with PTSD. Well, depending on the severity of their PTSD and what their symptoms are, that can really take its toll on the family. So, you have someone who may be self-medicating with alcohol or drugs, or they have anger issues, if they're taking that out on their spouses, their children, things like that, it really takes its toll on the home life, So these guys now that they provide that counseling and resources for the family members as well, So, and what's beautiful about that is a lot of times the spouses, they don't understand why their veteran is the way they are. They don't understand why this, why that, and so that's where they provide these resources for the family members to help them as well.
And there seems to be a lot more awareness about PTSD.
Much more
today.
Yeah.
Do you see Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, more recent combat veterans, are they more open to talk about their PTSD?
I think
issues?
they are. I think what's happened is the VA and the military both have evolved so much. They've evolved so much with Vietnam was critical in the aspect of, when they came back, they didn't have resources. Of course, World War II didn't have resources, or Korea, and with the Vietnam veterans, it was such a politicized thing when they came back. A lot of the public and stuff were spitting on them and, just horrible to them. So, a lot of these guys, and Vietnam was such a different war. World War II, it was almost like you had honor amongst enemies in a way, whereas in Vietnam, it was just all out, just gangster, and so it was different for those guys, seeing the women and children, they'd strap a bomb to a child and have them run into, a group of veterans, so it's like, what do you do? And they would have to shoot that child so they wouldn't come in and blow everybody up, and I mean, that's a horrible predicament to put a 18-year-old in or 19-year-old, it's like, how do you make that decision? You know what I'm saying? It's me or
it's impossible.
This child. And so the media spun it, and they start calling them baby killers and things like that, and it's like, oh my God, what's that kid supposed to do? And so anyway, so those guys, they went for so many years, but they got to a point to where they started fighting for their benefits.
Yeah.
And finally, people started to listen, and people started to realize we screwed up.
Yeah.
We didn't take care of these people. And so the VA has evolved, and they've learned from the mistakes with the Vietnam era, and they've applied it to, you know, the new military, the more modern military, and to the VA, you know. And so what military's done now is, like, you know, now they're providing tons of resources that they never had before for in-service counseling and therapy and things like that. And also, when the veterans getting ready to get out of service, they're much more aggressive in trying to help them, you know, guide them towards the VA and putting in for their benefits and things like that. So both systems are working together, and it's making it so now the veterans from today's military, you know, they're not used to not having resources. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the tides have turned. So now they know there's abundance of resources. It's just expected.
And I'm sure those World War II guys suffered the same things too.
Absolutely.
Because my grandma just didn't mention around her dad the war, but when he started talking about it, that's all I talked about for hours.
Yeah.
But you just never brought it up.
Right. Yeah. My grandfather was a World War II Marine.
Yeah.
And my grandmother told me when he came back, he had tremors real bad, you know, just like somebody had Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And he always had them as long as I remember,
Yeah.
you know. And she said he brought it back from the war. Never talked about it, never, until I joined the military. And that was what I went. I went to the Marine Corps to begin with. You know, I was an athlete in school and made good grades, but I thought I was all that in a bag of chips, you know, and I wanted to be a Marine. And so I told him, I was talking to the Marine recruiter, and he said, no. You're not going to the Marine Corps. He said, you're going to make something out of yourself, you know. And this was back in the 80s. And so I was like, okay, you know, he was my guy, you know, he was my buddy. And so essentially that's what, you know, guided me to the Navy. But, you know, of course, today's military is totally different. You know, you can make a great career out of any of the branches anymore, you know. But in his day, he was just thinking in his mind, you know, he was a grunt, and I wasn't going to be that way, you know. So, but anyway, so yeah, you're right. It was tough for them, but it was different for them though. You know, even though they came back with, you know, the mental scars and everything from the war, you know, they had support from the country.
It was like a world
from their
shaking
family.
event.
You know, it was like a warrior coming back.
Yeah.
You know, and unlike Vietnam.
Yeah, I was showing him.
Yeah, we were just
Carroll
looking at
County Historical
pictures.
Society has. Let me see if I can get it up here. I'll pull it up.
We had a picture of veterans
was-
coming back, just walking down the street.
It was Hillsville. It was in
It's a parade.
1919, and there's all the World War II or WW1 veterans coming back from Europe, and you can see them walking down the street, and it's just, and everybody's there, and there's banners, and they're cheering. It's Hillsville, which is kind of wild, but yeah, I saw this yesterday. That was them. That was up in Hillsville, but they were just all. Let me see if I can zoom in.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh,
yeah,
that's
it's Main
cool,
Street,
dude.
Hillsville.
Yeah.
All the dough.
Yeah,
was
that's
coming
cool.
back.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, had that support system. I think, and you said earlier, everybody went.
Yeah.
So you had all the country, the whole country's young men coming back.
Yeah, and when you came back, you were a hero.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, really, in their eyes, it's kind of like a Japanese samurai coming back. You know, as a, I mean, that's you know, and
It was an honor.
with Vietnam, it was just totally different.
Yeah.
You know, and so those guys came back and they were ashamed.
Yeah.
You know, and
I still think they're
it's horrible.
permeated.
And what's sad
throughout
is,
today.
you're still seeing a lot of Vietnam veterans are getting older, but you're seeing a lot of veteran homelessness.
oh yeah,
And that's a huge issue. And they said, I forget what the percentage of homeless people are actually veterans. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
You see that really around here. I know we're more northern.
Yeah, we really don't see it as much here. We have a few, but we have, I mean, there's a lot of resources for that.
Yeah.
That's a number one priority with VA, you know. Now, again, I don't work for the VA, you know, so I'll call a spade a spade. If the VA's jacked up in an area, I mean, you know, I'll recognize it for sure, but homelessness is number one for them, you know. And so we have really good resources for that. You know, we've got local shelters that if we have somebody, you know, that we can get them there. We have an organization here, and we've been doing it for some years. I started the Surry County Veterans Council. A lot of states, a lot of counties have their own Veterans Council. I started ours some years ago. And so what we do is all the organizations like the VFW, the DAV, all the representative from all those organizations, we get together once a month as one body. And so we have a fund. It's called Veterans in Distress Fund, and we use it for any veterans we have around here with immediate needs, whether it be a homeless. Somebody comes in here on a Friday afternoon. It may be hard to get some coordination through the VA or something here. Almost the weekend. So we can put them up. And pay for their hotel over the weekend till we can get some coordination, on Monday, things like that, So that's the kind of stuff we do here, for that. So, but we get, we don't see near as many, here as a lot of parts of the country. But we do have a homeless shelter for veterans only that just started here. And so that's a good thing. But so generally, if we have somebody, like I say, our immediate knee-jerk reaction is we'll put them up, in a hotel, we'll feed them and that kind of thing, until we can get, coordinated with the VA, on what they can do for them, and stuff like that. And the VA is real good at, at least, shelter, but then they help them, how to budget their money and things like that, they can help them be, turn their lives around. Some of them may not know, maybe they've just had a bad, bad life, and nobody's really taught them how to manage their money properly or, whatever it may be, so they try their best to give them the tools they need going forward, so they don't go back in that circumstance, and then we have some that, we had one veteran around here, we tried. He wanted to be homeless, we tried to get him in the healthcare system thinking, okay, maybe he's wanting to be homeless because maybe he has a mental condition and it's just it's an obstacle there, and he just enjoyed it. That was just what he liked to do. It was like it's like camping out every day. That was his mindset.
What, was he open with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
But so you take your areas where the climate's more stable. It's a different ball game. You may have more there.
I know, like LA and Atlanta, where it's warm, they're just.
Oh yeah, California's horrible right now.
Up here, I know it's warmer from up the mountain, but it still gets pretty cold in the wintertime. Really
Yeah.
You couldn't really.
So you get more south or more west. You're going to see it a little bit more. But the VA is making the effort. To take care of that. Absolutely. So I can say that can be their shining star right there. They're really good at that. Yeah.
I know, Ethan, you want to talk about the Navy.
Yeah.
A little bit. We're looking around your office and
there's a lot of
Well,
Navy.
I'm retired Navy,
Yes.
and so with my office, the reason, we go back to World War II and talk about that a lot. For some reason, I'm an old soul.
Yes.
I love that era. As you can see, that's like a World War II thing there.
Yeah.
Here's a World War II. That's a classic. I don't know if you guys ever seen that picture. That was a front page Time magazine. Times Square when the war was over. And then my grandfather was World War II. But because in our office we deal with a lot of negativity, whether it's a tragedy, PTSD, for veterans deceased, we do a lot of the burial benefits. We do footstones and grave markers and stuff like that. So generally, if somebody's in here, it's due to something negative. And so I try to have things to where somebody can smile about something or can ask a question and it can get their mind off of something bad, type of thing. So
kind of reminisce.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
So I went in the Navy. It was in the late '80s, and I wanted to try to do something beneficial with it. I wanted to go to school. My goal, I wanted to go to NC State. I wanted to play baseball, but I couldn't afford it. I was a single parent family. It just wasn't in the cards. So, but at the same time, I want to say I was smart enough to know that if I did try to go to school, I don't think I was quite disciplined enough, to say, okay, if I'm going to work off and then try to put myself through school, am I going to be disciplined enough to do that? And so that's when I thought maybe the military might be a good, because I never considered the military in school, never, And so then at that point I thought, maybe maybe the military's not so bad. And so I started looking into it, and thought, so that was about the time frame computers were finally starting to get, people were buying home computers then.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay,
Give it a shot.
so electronics, something like that. So in school we had I took electronics in high school. And so our teacher, he had been in the Air Force, and so he and I would talk. His son was graduated with me, and we were good friends. And so, he told me some good stuff, and so I thought, well, I'll look into it. Long story short, so I go in, and electronics was the job they offered me, but I was very worried about my recruiter. You hear all the horror stories and getting lied to and that kind of thing, So they're like, hey, yes, we have several electronics jobs. Here's one called electronics technician. I said, that's mine. That's what I want.
Yeah.
And so she was like, well, we got some other things here. And she's like, we want you to take this other test. And I was like, well, I'm okay. Electronics, that's really what I like to do.
Yeah.
She's like, well, why don't you take this other test? It was the nuclear power test,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, let's take it, But in my mind, I'm thinking, they're going to try to screw me out of something here, So I just kind of, I breezed through it real quick, didn't really put a lot of effort into it. And she's like, well, you didn't really do well enough, for, blah, 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 which, I didn't want to anyway. And she said, what do you think about submarine service? And I said, I don't care as long as I get my electronics,
Yeah.
So that was my thing. That was my she made my career choice for me right there. And so that's what I did. I went to about a year and a half worth of school for electronics up in Groton, Connecticut, and then I went to submarine service.
Did you go to basic at
Great Lakes?
Great Lakes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so I went to my first submarine, which was the USS Houston out of San Diego, and and then right behind you there. And as a matter of fact, that top picture up there is a scene from the movie. We filmed the Hunt for October,
Okay.
and
so
that's a scene from the movie there.
Were you on the vessel when they filmed the movie?
Yeah, we did all the outside stuff that you saw in the movie. All the internal stuff was Hollywood,
Yeah.
But a couple of the guys got to go up to Hollywood and be in the movie,
That's
and
cool.
then
Yeah.
be like help the actors with terminology
Yeah.
and things like that.
Have you seen the movie Captain Phillips?
Captain Phillips.
About Captain Phillips, he got kidnapped by Somalian pirates in 2009. Tom Hanks played him.
Tom Hanks. Yeah,
I know the Navy, they let them use some of their ships to film it.
Yeah.
I think the Bainbridge was the one that was actually, in the actual event, but they used her sister ship in the movie. And they had a lot of Navy sailors there.
Yeah. That was like us. We were, we're the USS Houston, but in the movie it was the Dallas.
Yeah.
Because of the book, and the Dallas was actually out of Groton, Connecticut. So they just used a same type of submarine, but right there, close to Hollywood. And but most of the stuff we did was like off the coast of Washington, up there. And if you ever see the movie, a lot of the outside scenes is kind of gloomy, the weather and stuff, which is Washington State weather, so that was kind of cool. And then we went to Hawaii, so we changed home ports to Pearl Harbor, and so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then I went from there to Pensacola, Florida, for a school. So in the Navy, you have what they call like a seashore rotation.
Okay.
And so you go to your sea command for generally 4 years, and then after that you go to a shore duty, is what they call it. So and it's usually like for 3 years. That's the traditional. It varies from place to place. But so for me, I wanted to go teach the electronics school I went through as my shore duty, and it was overmanned. So I only had two choices. I could either go be a recruiter, or I could go to boot camp and be like a drill instructor, And I'd been away from home for a while, so I thought, well, maybe I'll do the recruiting thing, come close to home, family. And so I did that and ended up in Charleston, West Virginia. So I recruited up there for really almost 4 years. I extended to stay a little longer. I really enjoyed it. Those kids up there, they just didn't have a lot. It was either working the coal mines or, go get on drugs somewhere. So So that was kind of cool. I really enjoyed it up there, and so I did that tour, and then I went from there to the USS Baltimore, which was a submarine out of Norfolk, Virginia, which is over your shoulder right there.
Okay.
And we decommissioned her, and me being a big baseball fan, Brooks Robinson came down as a special guest speaker from the city of Baltimore when we decommissioned. He's a Hall of Fame third baseman for the Orioles, so that was a big deal for me. That was really cool.
That is cool.
And so I got to meet him and get some autographs. But when I was my last year in recruiting duty, I was coming home on the weekends a lot, and me and my high school sweetheart got back together. We ended up getting married. And so my intent when I went to recruiting duty was when it was done, I was going to go back to the West Coast because I loved San Diego.
Yeah.
But then we got married, and so that's why I went to Norfolk to be closer to home here. So I went out there. She stayed here while I was out there, but so I did that tour, and I actually got out
Yeah.
because I wanted to try to change career paths. I've seen a lot of marriages not go so well, and she didn't like me being gone a lot. So I thought, well, let's see if I can change career paths in the Navy and maybe get out of going to sea so much. And but they didn't want to let me get out of submarine service. Usually pretty undermanned. So my contract was up, so I had a choice: either stay in or get out. So I got out. And I took a gamble and came home, joined the reserves to keep my time. And after about a year and a half or so, we decided we missed it. And so I went back in and was able to change my career path at that point. And I became a Navy counselor.
Okay.
And so that's what I did for probably the last 8 or 9 years of my career. Became a counselor, helping guide people in their careers and things like that. And that was really cool. I really enjoyed that. And that's when I realized when I went to recruiting duty that electronics was cool and I enjoyed it. But for me personally, it became I liked helping people. So that was why I changed there, and it was great. I loved it, and it was a perfect segue into this job. So worked out good.
And I wanted to ask you this about Navy boot camp. The final exam in Navy boot camp, don't they put you on a ship or
It's
a part of a ship at night and have everybody work together?
No, they didn't. They may now.
Yeah, from what
they
I've seen
didn't for me.
From what I've seen on YouTube, they have it's not an actual ship, but it's like a building.
Yeah.
And they have like fires that you have to put out. You have to work together.
Yeah.
Certain scenarios.
Right. So we did things like that, and that's called damage control. So it's unique that you're your own fire department.
That's what they said.
And even more unique was submarine service because on a ship you have D-seamen, which is damage controlmen, and that's their job. Their job is to be your firefighters and things like that. Whereas on a submarine we don't have that, so we're our own firefighters. We're our own security force. So when we pull into a port, whether it's our own port or a foreign port, we're our own security. So we're manning, our weapons and our watches and things like that to, protect the submarine. So it's submarine service is a little unique in that regard.
Is it a tighter knit group of people?
Very much so.
Yeah,
very much so. How many students are going to be in your graduating class?
240 something.
Oh wow! So that's a big school.
Mine's 270.
Okay, wow.
So,
I had 100
Wow.
here in Surry County.
Okay.
So the smaller the group, the more tight knit you are. And that's kind of how we were. So we have a crew generally. Now the newer subs, it may be a little different. I was on a fast attack Los Angeles class. Now it's the Seawolf and Virginia class. But so we roughly usually carried around 140 people. But generally those worlds are broken in half. So you have your forward crew and then you have your aft crew, and those were usually the nukes. And it's just how it is. It's just two different worlds, within, because the work is so different, and so you're very tight knit, but you have to be so resourceful, because you're isolated. You don't have, whereas a ship it's so much bigger, and so like if you have a part that's broken, you can go to this department or division or whatever it is, you have resources. On a
Yeah.
submarine, you just don't have. You
Make do.
do what you got to do.
Yeah.
You're MacGyver.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that part of it, having to be that way and learning how to do all that, and so it just made it a little
Yeah.
unique.
And you said tight. Did you ever have to deal with claustrophobia when you started out?
Yeah, you go through a psychological profile and everything, before to make sure,
Yeah.
and so everybody had to do that. Yeah, but they're bigger than you think they
Mhm.
are. They're pretty. Well, it's not much different than in a ship.
Yeah.
In a way.
Y'all would spend extended amounts of time underwater. Right?
Sure. Oh yeah. I mean, you live. your whole when you're out to sea, you're underwater.
Yeah.
When you're in port, you're underwater. So what you see, like that picture behind over your shoulder there, both those, you see it's sitting, it's on top of the water, but 2/3 of that sub is underwater right there.
Yeah.
So when we go out, when you're out to sea, we only come up maybe once a day to communicate.
You
Do
can't even
do
get
some
out,
evolutions, and then we're gone.
Yeah.
We're underwater. So
I read a story about, I don't remember what sub it was, but they had left with only a month worth supply of oxygen, and they had to burn candles for oxygen.
well, see, we generate our own oxygen.
Okay.
So
Or maybe the generators were not functioning
could
correctly.
have been the O2 generator.
Maybe.
So yeah. So we have an oxygen generator, and as people have different terms for it, but it's essentially like a hydrogen bomb.
Okay.
It's about as powerful as a hydrogen bomb, and it's not very big, but basically so you basically split a water molecule, and we keep the oxygen, we dispose of the hydrogen,
Yeah.
and so that's how we generate our oxygen, and so if that goes out, there's
The candle.
they had
Yeah. I forgot what they were called. I just thought that was kind of crazy how you can burn a candle to create oxygen.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
but generally if something goes on, we're going to surface.
Yeah.
And
of course.
we would then snorkel, use the diesel to snorkel, and then you circulate, air and stuff like that, so.
You mentioned nukes.
Mhm.
If I go into the Navy, that's what I want to do. I want to be a nuke.
Yeah.
Have you had any experience with the nuclear service?
Well, see, we were nuclear. They're all nuclear. So,
Well, I
you know,
mean, like in terms of being a nuke.
well, anybody on a submarine, you have to have a basic understanding of nuclear power.
Oh, okay.
You know,
I see.
so on a ship, not necessarily. So with us, so like right here.
Yeah.
All right, so those are your dolphins.
I saw that,
To
and
be
you have-
to be submarine qualified, you have to earn your dolphins, and so to do that, you have to learn. You have to have a basic knowledge of nuclear power.
Okay.
The generators. The O2 generator, diesel engines, hydraulics, high pressure air systems, what we call a trim and drain system. So every aspect of that submarine you have to have a basic knowledge of. You have to know where every single fire extinguisher is.
Okay.
All over that ship. You have to know where all the we have just like a firefighter. We have our oxygen packs. But most everybody has just a mask with a hose. And so all over the submarine, you have different manifolds, oxygen manifolds that you plug into to get your oxygen.
Okay.
So if you're going from one space to another, you unplug and you're holding your breath till you get to the next station and you plug in, that kind of thing. So that's one of the things we train on all the time is firefighting and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, but everybody that qualifies has to go back to the engine room, and you learn different things because like the generators and stuff are back there, so you get a basic knowledge of nuclear power. You interact with those guys every day, and so and it's not like you can't go back there. If you're a part of the crew, anybody can go back there. It's just that the worlds are different.
Okay.
Like the nukes. A lot of the forward crew on a submarine, electronics technicians like myself, sonar guys, the fire control guys, a lot of those guys are nuke dropouts.
Okay.
So they're pretty sharp cookies.
Yeah.
Nuclear power school is hard,
It's hard.
dude.
Yeah, that's what I've read
It's a
about.
big dropout rate.
Yeah,
It's
I think it's well over like 70%.
it's tough. It really is. Those guys, man, they're hitting you with a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. You know, that's the big thing.
Yeah.
You know, you're learning a lot in a short amount of time, and you know, so it's stressful, and you know, there's night study and just
I've heard it been described as like a mechanical engineering degree condensed within a year.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting a lot. You know, and if you think about it, you're going to school every day.
Yeah.
Versus you know semester, some time off,
breaks,
you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And even when you're going to school, you know, as a full-time student, you're not in class every single day for the same thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, when you go to nuclear school, you're not learning, you know, it's not just general classes. You know, it's nuclear engineering every day.
Yeah.
You know, so there's something to be said for somebody who gets through nuclear power school. You know, that's an achievement. You know, for sure. So then you would then at that point, you know, you're going to decide: are you going to be in electronics, are you going to be a mechanic, or are you going to be an electrician? So those are the three rates.
Yeah.
You know,
I look at the 3 different rates, but I wasn't really sure which rate, because you can choose which of the rates.
Correct.
Yeah, I wasn't sure really which one I would probably talk to a recruiter and figure that out.
yeah, I would say recruiter could be a good source depending on if they have a background or if they can, you know what I'm saying.
And
you may
that's what I was
rely
hoping.
on as many people as possible. So really at the end of the day, so what's happening is so your job, primarily your everyday job is if there's an electronic failure, electrician, you know, wiring problem or a mechanical problem, you know, your job is to fix it, fix the problem, you know, but at the same time, you guys are working with nuclear power, you know, so, you know, you're kind of, you know, you guys are always, usually your gear is working well because we do a lot of preventative maintenance.
Yeah.
And in the Navy, we call it PMS, Preventative Maintenance System. So essentially what does that mean? It's kind of like your car. You know that every so many thousand miles you have to go get your oil changed. You know, you get your tires rotated.
Yeah.
You know, you do the general things like that. So with us, PMS is the same thing. So preventative maintenance system is exactly what it is. So say for an electronics technician, you're going to take your computers, you're going to make sure that there's no dust buildup around the fan, you know, stuff like that. You're going to keep it cleaned out and vacuumed out and all that kind of stuff. You know, you're going to routinely test this system, make sure everything's working properly. So, you know, the nukes are continuously doing things like that, you know, all the time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Making sure nothing bad happens.
That's exactly. So you're always doing that to make sure equipment's working properly. You know, so because in your world, when things go south, they're real bad. You know, so one, you keep all your system, you know, running smooth, because if everything's running smooth and there's no problems, life good. You know, so that's why you do your preventative maintenance. So you're constantly doing that. You guys are constantly training, you know, about nuclear power, safety, and just the whole 9 yards. You know, but on top of that, you got to do what everybody else is doing. You got to do your firefighting, you know, and that kind of stuff. You know, so it's a ton of training. You're continuously training all the time.
I think it was like a year and a half. I think is power school.
Power school's a year and a half,
Yeah.
right? So, and then different rates, different jobs. So, like your mechanics, for example, we would get a lot of those guys that come directly in the fleet right out of school, already as an E6, because the mechanics can, I want to say, aren't they? Because it's been a minute, but bear with me. But I think the mechanics are the ELTs, where they have like a little lab where they work with, you know, chemicals and stuff. But I think the mechanics did that, and so some people will get offered to stay behind after power school and be part of, you know, that pipeline, you know, and they would be guaranteed like E5.
Yeah.
You know, to do that, and then usually by the time they would get out to the fleet, they'd be an E6 already in like 6 years or something. You know, I mean, just something crazy.
Yeah.
You know, so those would be some things that you would really want to look into. You know, to see as far as that goes. You know, because, you know, no matter which of the three jobs, I mean, you're going to have that background in nuclear power.
Yeah.
You know, so then, you know, you want to look at the aspects like, okay, At that point, most everybody you're going to be dealing with that's coming right out of the fleet, they're either going to be an E4 getting ready to become an E5. So you're already that much ahead of the ball game.
Yeah.
If you're an E6,
Yeah,
you're just making more money. At the end of the day.
Yeah. And,
So career-wise, you're looking at that. The nukes have tremendous re-enlistment bonuses.
Yeah.
But at that point, your enlistment's up, and then you have to make the hard decision: do you want to make a career out of it? Or do you want to get out into the public sector, and do something in that regard?
I believe, at least currently, that the minimum enlistment, like the initial enlistment, is 6 years.
It is.
And I'm not sure if the always been like that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And it was the same for me. Any kind of advanced program like that, it's a 6-year enlistment because they essentially look at the first 2 years as just basically going to be school.
Training. Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned getting your dolphins. Did you have to go to a school for that, or was
Well,
that part of
you
your
will
training
if you were to do submarines, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, so right out of boot camp, you're going to go to submarine school.
Yeah.
So it's going to be like a 6-week school. The book side of giving you the basic, of submarine service.
Yeah.
So you're going to learn the basics of how the ventilation system works. How the high pressure air systems work. What we call our trim and drain. So what trim and drain is basically is a lot of the piping, the plumbing, for seawater, because we're round, and we're buoyant, by nature. We have to sink ourselves, so we fill our trim tanks up with water.
I see.
So we sink, But even then, when you're driving, if this tank is full and this tank's empty, we're going to be like this. So they have to keep the water
Regulated.
the trim,
Okay,
exactly. So if you've got sanitary tanks over here that get full, so we're constantly moving water around in our trim systems to keep everything running straight.
I see.
So if this side gets heavy versus this side, so that's your trim system. Your drain system is you pump that water out. If there's a fire or if we have a flooding, for example, then so I've got 4 or 5 guys from when I was on the USS Houston. There was a flooding where, and the reason you have to know a basic knowledge of all this stuff. So let's just say that, I don't know, you're on a submarine, we work 8-10-hour days. So you're on 6, off 12. Okay. Most people, not you, not nukes.
Not nukes.
Technically, you're off 12, but you're going to be training a lot of that. So essentially, a third of the crew is asleep all the time. Okay, and so the reason they do that is you got a third of the crew sleeping, a third of the crew on watch, and a third of the crew can either be training or playing games or whatever it is, And but you always have somebody resting to come on watch. To take over everything.
It's a cycle. Yeah.
Exactly. So now I lost my train of thought. So
You're talking about getting your dolphins.
yes, your dolphins.
Yes.
So for sub school's about 6 weeks. So you learn the basics, and then when you get to the sub, you apply all that.
Yeah.
So now you get the hands-on part. So the reason it's important is I know where I was going. I'm sorry. So for example, if you're off watch, and so you're up in line, you're going to get something to eat. It's time to eat, and there's an emergency. Okay, you may be close to. I know where that AFFF fire extinguisher is. And any idea why we use AFFF? You know what that is?
I do not know.
So AFFF is a foam.
Okay.
Most fire extinguishers is CO2.
Okay.
Comes out as a powder. Okay, but if you have like a grease fire or an oil or something like that, a liquid, something like CO2 is going to spread that liquid, whereas a foam is going to smother it.
Okay.
Is that the one they said causes cancer?
It can.
That,
yes.
that the fire department use? Okay.
Yep. Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
So we have AFFF, we have CO2. So we have different types of systems like that for different purposes. Different types of fires. So that's why you learn all this stuff. So you may be somewhere and you are in an area where there's a main valve for ventilation system, and there's a fire. So when there's a fire, you want to shut down all ventilation so that smoke don't spread.
Yeah.
So that's really everybody's worst fear is fire.
Yeah.
Because
oxygen
this room would fill up with smoke in seconds.
Yeah.
And then you disoriented and all that kind of stuff. So fire is a big deal. So ventilation, so you have an understanding. It's like, oh, I remember that valve is. You can shut that valve,
Shut it and then extinguish that.
So that's why everybody has a basic understanding from forward to aft
safety
about
being,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So you learn the books side of it in school, and then when you get there, you get to apply it in person. And so it takes generally 6 months to a year. Before you get to a point to where, so they give you your qualifications, and so these are the list of everything that I have to have checked off or signed off by somebody. So somebody senior that's that they have deemed somebody who's eligible to sign this off for somebody, we call it your qual card. So somebody who's basically an expert, with one of these systems. And so you, at a point, you demonstrate, a basic knowledge of where this valve is or that valve, or where this extinguisher is and that extinguisher and all that kind of stuff. So you can tell one of the mechanics how the diesel engine works. That kind of stuff.
Verifying that you just know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
To some extent.
Exactly. And so once you do, they sign you. They say, "Yep, he's good to go."
Yeah.
And so once you get your qual card done, then you'll go through a board.
Okay.
And then you'll have some of the experts, like maybe about 4 or 5 people, and so they're going to ask you, questions. They're going to drill you in this board.
Yeah.
They may ask you to draw the ventilation system, and have all the valves on it,
Very
or
thorough.
whatever it may be,
Yeah.
and so so it's when you get qualified and get your dolphins, you've done something. It's a pretty substantial accomplishment, so it's pretty cool,
Yeah.
but what's cool about it is, for us, was you're not just going to be an electrician or an electronics technician or a mechanic. Now you're going to know all about nuclear power. You're going to know how to be a firefighter. But these are things you're going to apply to everyday life. That's what's so cool about it.
You learn not only about your job, it seems, from people I've talked to and read about online, but other people's jobs and just safety, like survival.
At home, I have fire extinguishers all over the place. I mean, in my mind, I think, okay, I've got one. I have a detached garage from my home, and so I have like a big fire extinguisher in my garage, because I'm thinking, okay, if I pull up to my house and the house is on fire, I can grab this and go in, or I have one beside my bed.
Being prepared.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of stuff you get from that, living in that environment, because that's how your whole life is on board a submarine. Is you're always planning, for these type of emergencies and so forth. So it's kind of cool. So that's why I say you apply it to your own personal life.
I didn't think about it like that.
So you seem like a very smart kid. You're probably going to keep our school. But you may not think about some of these things that you will apply to your life going forward. That kind of stuff. Having a concept of what it's like to, guard the submarine. How to handle an M16 or a shotgun or a 9mm pistol, a handgun, and standing guard, and learning how to do all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just the things that won't be just the aspect of your specific job, that you're going to take away from it.
It makes you more rounded, I guess.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But that's what was so unique about us versus, say, somebody on a ship. Is most people on a ship, you do your job,
That's it.
you're done, you go to bed, because all these you have your own firefighters that take care of that stuff.
Yeah.
You have your own security force, or our form of military police, that are your security, that kind of stuff. So life's totally different down there. Whereas for us, it's just.
And what years were you in the submarine service?
So I did 2 different submarines. I was on the U.S. Houston in late 80s through the early 90s, and then I was on the Baltimore in, when did I go there? Like mid 90s to late 90s.
Okay.
So I know, the Soviet Union was around during that time. And I know now, with the threat from China, the Pacific Fleet's doing a lot of exercises with our partners. What's it like exercising with different submarines and different stuff?
Well, we did it quite a bit. When I went to the Houston, my first submarine, we were still in the Cold War at that point, and really submarine service was probably at its height around the world. That was probably one of the premier forces, that most people focused on, because it was always the cloak and dagger, the spying on each other and that kind of thing, because it, where we were at that point. And so really that was the big focus for us, So what I did specifically as an electronics technician is, and this is again part of the world of being in submarines, is you not only are going to school to learn how to fix your equipment, but you also operate your equipment. And the equipment that I operated was like the periscope. There's tons of electronics and antennas and stuff in the periscopes. And then I had the equipment that I operated was we could take, so anything on the ocean has to have a radar. You have to have. And so the equipment I had, as soon as the periscope would breach the water, it would start intercepting any radar signals. And I could take that signal and break it down and tell you exactly what platform it was, whether it's a Russian, ship or, plane or whatever it was, And so exact same thing that sonar does with noise signatures in the water, I was doing it with radar signatures, so we could tell because when we're up close to the surface, it's very noisy. So sonar kind of loses its advantage, and then we turn to, radar, So one, we're trying to stay, not be detected, but then at the same time, we want to know what our environment is. So yeah, it was a big deal when I first went in. I mean, everything for us was focused on, the Russians, because I was West Coast. So it was a big deal. And we did a lot of exercises with other branches. I mean, other countries and different things. We would play war games and stuff.
Like NATO's ramping up their exercises, 'cause I think they had the biggest air exercise in history. In the Pacific in the past few weeks. It's a big deal. We did stuff with the Japanese, Navy and Australia and, all these, United Kingdom, all the different, our allies and stuff, we would do different things with, But you always only do so much. I mean, you never show your full potential and stuff like that, it was always pretty unique.
And you mentioned being in the reserves for about a year. What was that like?
So it was pretty cool. It was, you do 1 weekend a month, and then you do the
2 weeks a year.
2 weeks a year, and so it was a way for me to keep my time going, because I really didn't know what my future was going to hold. Was I going to maybe try to stay in the reserves and retire from that, or just get out and be done completely, whatever. And so I did that for a little while. For around here, I went to Greensboro, every month, and so the thing about the reserves is, for the Navy anyway, you can only do so much because you're not on a ship or anything, so it's mostly like classroom stuff, and it really wasn't a lot to it, to be honest with you. Now, if you were, say, in the Army Guard, something like that, that's more
hands-on.
What we have around here, there's different.
Like when COVID vaccines were getting distributed.
Right.
National Guard got called to help. And
Absolutely, because they're also a state agency, that type of thing. But the facilities, are geared more, say, like in the Army, like the Guard or the Reserves, their facilities are geared towards that particular type of job, where I was drilling in Greensboro. Now, we had a Navy CB unit, so which is a combat construction. Right. So they had facilities there for them to do stuff and work, and do things. There was a medical clinic, so like our hospital corpsman could actually do hands-on stuff. But, people like me, I didn't have facilities to do anything, so it was classroom, type stuff,
Still learning.
The CBs are pretty cool.
The CBs are cool.
CBs are cool.
They are very cool.
If I don't score high enough to be a nuke, I think I would consider CB.
CBs are really cool. And I'll tell you why CBs are cool is, again, with whatever your job is, you can apply it to your own personal life. But I will say this, and most people will probably tell you this, trades are coming back. Trades are a big deal now because it's skipped a few generations, So like when I went in, you know, everybody was trying to get on that electronics bandwagon, computers, because that's when everything was starting.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so like our parents, they were doing the trades out here. They were your plumbers and electricians and stuff like that, you know. So, but that's when the boom was college, you know, so nobody was doing the trades anymore. You know, now it's a huge demand, you know, because it skipped, you know, some generations there. So now I think somebody told me, and I may be wrong, but I thought the statistic was somewhere around 70% of the plumbers in North Carolina who are certified plumbers are like in their late 50s or something, early 60s, something like that. So, you know, that's getting ready to be phased out, you know, and I mean,
They're retiring
and they, you know, that pays very well. I have a good friend of mine. He's a little bit younger than me, but his dad around here is a plumber. He had a pretty significant business, but this boy, you know, instead of doing things he could have been doing, his dad focused on him learning the trade and starting from the ground floor and working his way up. Now he owns he's bought out several other local businesses, you know, and things like that. And he's made, you know, basically a monopoly, you know, and he's done very well for himself, you know. But so, you know, those kind of things are going to be in high demand, you know, and you know, so. You know, like for me, you know, if I wanted to focus on electronics when I get out, I could have probably ended up in Greensboro or the Raleigh area, you know, making $50,000-$60,000 a year, and you know, sitting with an oscilloscope every day, you know, doing that. You know, if making that, because it's the environment's so saturated, you know, with those type of people anymore. So, you know, so it's kind of one of those things. If you know, like you say, if you don't do nuclear power, that would be a good option. You know, just because of, you know, the future that it could hold for you. You know, which could be, you know, one of the things I see here, and I saw a lot when I was doing the counseling thing. I was getting a lot of people who had a lot of student debt. They couldn't find jobs. You know, degrees from Carolina or wherever it was. You know, and they were struggling, you know, and they were coming to the reserves for that extra income, you know, some health care benefits, you know, and then a ton of student debt. And, you know, they're, you know, if they got a job, they're not going to be making very much, you know. And
I've thought about the reserves also, like, as I'm going through school, because I would like to go to school. I don't know, maybe in order, but reserves through school, and then after
we interviewed
maybe not.
an Army recruiter.
Yeah,
he talked a lot about that.
And it's definitely a good idea, because, you know, through the reserves, so you're getting some extra income, you know, every month, and you know,
also
so
working towards retirement too.
Exactly. But the education benefits are fantastic. You know, and you're getting some health care, you know, benefits while you're you know, doing your thing, going to school or whatever it is, you know. So it's definitely a good option. You know, absolutely.
But I looked into it, and you can't be a nuke in the reserves.
No.
So
no,
I would have to retrain or pick another. And,
right.
So
you know,
it's still something to think about, you know. And then I talked to you off the mic about the Naval Academy too. Like maybe exploring it.
Of course, that's pretty prestigious. I mean, if you did the academy, that'd be fantastic. You know,
and if everything worked out perfectly, I would like to do electrical engineering at the Naval Academy. And then do nuclear for my service obligation.
That'd be cool. I mean, it'd be a phenomenal future for you. You know,
and
absolutely.
I just think, like, there's a lot of history and tradition that goes along with the Naval Academy.
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely.
There's some
any of the academies are fantastic, you know.
That's true, too.
I mean, you know, I'm partial to the Naval Academy.
Of course, right.
but yeah, I mean, they're awesome, man. They're just, fantastic. Most of the officers that I've ever known that went through the academy, you could just tell they were just sharp. They were on their game. You know, they were in a little bit different tier, you know, than somebody that didn't. You know what I mean? It was a little different, something, you know. So it's good stuff.
And they get to pick which ships they're going to be on too, don't they? Because I know they have
I
their
think
ship.
I think they get to request, like,
because they have that big board, don't they? Go up and pick out the.
It depends. It depends on what your job is, and then so you have what's called a detailer, and then your detailer is kind of like your air traffic controller. You know, they know what is available and where it's available. You know, so when it's time for you to, rotate either into, where you're going or whatever. They may say, okay, well, I've got, this ship or submarine, depending on, what your background is, here, here, and here, which one would you like, and you kind of, so like when I got my first set of orders, I was in my last school, and they came in one day just out of the blue. They said, okay, you guys are going to pick your orders today. We've got, there was like 10 of us in this class, and they said, okay, here's 10 sets of orders, and you're going to pick by class rank. Mm. So that's how you got your order, So, and, but then, other scenarios, it just depends. You may have an opportunity to say, you got this, this, and this, and you get to choose, out of that, So basically it's needs of the Navy is what it boils down to. Yeah. It's like, okay, where do we have a need for what you are, and these are your options, and it may be this is your only option, type of thing.
Because I was watching like the video they did. I think the first in the class got to go first, and they had like a bunch of ships.
And that's how it was for us.
I think they got like a sword, and then they picked out which ship they're going in. It showed like where the ship was stationed at.
Sure.
Yeah. And like Italy and all these places got picked. And then you got towards the end, it was like something.
All the good stuff gets going.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you never know. You never know the type of command you're going to. You never know. Really, everything generally is based on the CO. Mm-hmm. What type of atmosphere do you have? What type of environment are you going into? Is it very volatile? Is everybody kind of pissed off at the world? And so you never know. You may think you're getting a diamond in the rough, and you may get there and everybody's freaking miserable because this guy's all type of thing. So you just never know. For you, your world's going to be the same everywhere you go. You guys are, the nukes are just, your head's in the book or training or something all the time. Morale is everything, wherever you go. Submarine service, you always try to keep morale up because that's a driving force for a lot of things. Something as insignificant as the meal. The meal, the cooks were, they drove morale. Mm-hmm. If it was a bad meal, everybody's pissed off.
I saw you joking. It's like, there's two people you don't want to piss off, finance and the cook.
Right. So the cooks were, everybody tried to be their buddy. But really, that was a driving factor. It was a big deal. Cause,
food.
If it sucked, now, it's not like you can go to Mickey D's or anything. Yeah. You know what I mean? Your meal's your meal.
Stuck.
Exactly. Yeah. So they try really hard to have good morale, and stuff. So, you just never know. But just like anything, you get where you're going to go and you work hard, and that's the big thing. Everybody just wants to see that you're going to work hard, you're going to pull your load. That's a big deal. Yeah.
Mr. Scott, as we're finishing up here, we always have a series of questions we ask all the people we interview. Ethan, you want to go ahead?
Do you have any advice for younger people thinking about the armed services, maybe the Navy specifically?
Well, I would definitely encourage anybody to look at it, for a number of reasons. But I think just the sheer, kind of like what we were talking about a while ago, there's the life aspects of things that you learn. You guys are, seem to be, squared away young men. I can tell, you're both, really sharp. Especially by what you're doing here. That's, outstanding. But, there's a lot to this world, outside of Carroll County and, this part of the country. But, you can, by going in the military, I think that, there's a lot of unforeseen things that a lot of people don't account for. Obviously, you grow up fast, you become a man, that kind of thing. But there's things that, you're going to get credit, soon to be able to, buy cars and have credit cards and just, things like that most people don't think about, that kind of gets you under that your parents' umbrella a little bit, and so just things that, where you're going to mature faster, But you get to see this big world in a short period of time, things that you might not get to do, at a community college or university somewhere, So, you're going to get your education, and but you're also going to get all these life lessons and things that you're going to be able to take with you. But, the doors that are going to open for you, it's unmeasurable.
Yeah.
The type of opportunities that you can get through the military, and you never know what it may be, but for somebody who, and I'm not saying, going any other route is bad by any means. There's just more opportunity for somebody, going through the military than, going through a traditional, getting your education, at a university somewhere, and then, you get a job somewhere, again, absolutely nothing wrong with that by any means, but you can do the same thing here and a lot more. But that's kind of a little, my take on after living it and trying to be optimistic about it, and not being partial one way or the other, trying to think outside the box for everybody. I just feel like there's so much more opportunity these days, the things that you can gain from your time in the military, and the people you get to meet. It's very fun. When I was in boot camp, my mom's from Chicago. My dad's from here. I've always lived here, but having my family up there that I spent a lot of time with in the summers and things like that, I got to see a whole different part of the country, and interact with a whole different, group of people, that think different than we do here, and so, so that was really cool. So in boot camp, there's guys from Brooklyn, New York, from Alaska, and, Missouri and Oklahoma, and all these people, we come together, and it's like, it was kind of unique, looking back on it now, and I see, here we are as a group, everybody gets their little cliques, but still you're like, dude, tell me what it was like living in Alaska, and to him it's like,
It's Alaska, what?
it's normal,
Yeah.
but, for us, we want to know, and so it was just kind of cool, and that's really how your whole time is, you meet all these people, matter of fact, I had a phone call a couple evenings ago. It was a guy, he's from Tulsa, Oklahoma, craziest guy I've ever met in my life, and, we talked for the first time in years. We were together on our first submarine, and it was just, we had a reunion recently, and I didn't get to go, and he went, and so, we hooked up and we were talking, and it was just so freaking awesome, talking to him, after all these years. But I don't know, man, some of the things you get to do, the memories that you have, you just can't get that stuff back, you'll never make those type of memories any other way. It's pretty cool. So that's kind of my little 2 cents on that.
That's something we've kind of experienced to a lesser degree with this, because we've met so many amazing people through the podcast. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, people we never really get to talk to.
Yeah.
And if you go to school somewhere and you do the reserves, you're going to get to meet those type of people as well. It's just different when you're isolated, part of a group, an organization, a branch of the military like that. It's just a different world.
Yeah.
You're all together now, and everybody's in the same the same circumstance, and you make the best of it, and you become the best friend you'll ever have in your life, type of thing. Somebody you'd eat a bullet for, if you had to, for that person, that kind, so it's just a little different of a brotherhood, sisterhood type of environment.
There's a bond.
It is. It really is. So.
And our next question, it runs along the same vein as the previous question. What is your advice for young adults just making their way in the world? Not militarily exactly, but just in general.
Yeah. So well, that's an awesome question that a lot of people should have to answer. But I think that. I think that more people should have respect for their fellow man, woman, whoever it is. I don't think that people should be so quick to judge somebody by how they look or whatever. I think, morals and ethics and things like that, maybe not quite as strong in today's society as they used to be. Those are some things that you learn in the military, so I just see that everybody's quick to knee jerk on just something that they hear or something that a friend says, and I think people would be more best served to do their own research about something, take some time and don't make knee jerk reaction decisions to different things, but just respect your fellow person, love your fellow person, and just because they may look different or say something you don't necessarily agree with, doesn't make them a bad person. It's healthy to have different opinions. That's how our country started. People had different opinions, and everybody came together, and take the best of both worlds, and be better because of it. And I wish people would do that more.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
But,
And our last question is something that we asked every other that we interview, and we always get pretty good answers to it.
Yeah, it's very diverse answers, but it's a good one. And what is the meaning of life to you?
Personally.
wow. I'm a very optimistic person. I'm a glass half full person. I take something that's been given to me, and I make the best out of it. I find the good in everything, and try to make the best of it. And that's kind of how I've always just lived my life. I think there's things happen to us that we can't. There's nothing we can do about. We don't have any control over it, and I think you just have to take what's been given and make the best of it. If you're not positive, in life, or try to have that positive outlook, you're just going to be completely miserable all the time. And so I've always been a glass half full person. I just always try to make the best out of a bad situation. So. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It's totally up to the person that answers it.
So, I'm a high on life guy.
Yeah.
I'm always happy. I'm always upbeat. I just think, I don't know, the meaning of life, man, I just want to be happy. I just think if everybody's happy, the world would be such a better place, and so that's just me, man. I'm a happy-go-lucky guy, so.
Absolutely.
I want the best for everybody.
Yes,
I want everybody to be happy and have a good, a good way. So.
Mr. Scott, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day
I appreciate
to
it.
meet
It's
with
been
us.
great, man.
It's been an honor.
Yeah, thank you for telling us about veteran services and your
Absolutely.
time.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.